Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Oh, good morning, Maggie. Thank you. Wow, a response. I really appreciate you sticking around to hear this presentation. I personally think it's interesting and valuable, but I would, right? So, but I should give you a little bit of an overview about how I think about this presentation in the beginning, which is to say I want to be as brief as I possibly can. I want to give you as much information that I think you're probably going to ask about, but I want to leave plenty of time for questions. The wonderful thing about career development is that it's unique to all of you. You all come with a variety of different experiences, and you certainly all want to go a variety of different places. So there's typically some questions that I couldn't have anticipated, and I want to give time so that we can identify and talk through that. So I mentioned it this morning, but I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Gail Zurich. I'm the Executive Director of Career Development, and try not to hit my mic when I do that. I'm joined by part of my team. Adana Larkins is here. She's Employer Relations. Adana works tirelessly to make sure that we have employers on campus and posting positions and that we're maintaining those relationships. We also have another staff member, David Goodlow. He's our coordinator. David's actually down with a group of students at the GAO offices in downtown Chicago doing some information sessions with students who are graduating. And we have a fourth employee, Casey Tinbarge, who is any day now, we hope, going to give birth to her first baby. So she's at home because she scares us all when she's here. So hopefully she's at home. I know she's doing well. I heard from her today. But that's our team. So we're small, but we're mighty. And we're all very interested in working with you. So my apologies that we're not all here, but we're busy. So that's what we're doing. So first, I think the first question most people have when they come to this sort of day, and certainly in this session, is what's the value of a Harris degree? What does this mean? And I have the distinct pleasure of being able to work with employers and hear from our alums. And what I hear time and time again is we have an amazing reputation for being able to analyze complex data and to be able to communicate sound policy. Now, that may seem sort of easy, but I can tell you there's places that perhaps really focus on the sound policy, and maybe there's other places that focus really on the analysis of data, but employers love people who can do both. So if you're interested in doing both, that's a beautiful thing. We have some amazing alums. It was a big debate in our office about who we put on here because the list could really go long. And I would encourage you to go to our website. We have a section for alumni. There's Alumni Profiles. You can read about them. What I think is valuable about that piece is you can see the variety of places people have gone and their experience. And our alums really speak to our degree and what you can do afterwards. Suffice to say, employers really are interested in connecting with Harris School folks. I met with somebody earlier this week, and he said, I've gone all around and asked who can do this, and everybody keeps saying Harris. Everybody keeps saying Harris is the place I need to go find students, and that's why I want to have a conversation with you. I, of course, was very excited about that. So, for instance, actually, the CIA is here today. They're doing some interviews of our students. They are very interested in what we offer for a reason I haven't yet mentioned, and I hope someone on faculty or earlier today has talked to you about, and that's the ability to take classes around the university. You really have access to this world-renowned institution, so if you want to take a language class, or you want to take a class over Middle Eastern Studies, or SSA, or something that the Committee on International Relations offers, you get the ability to benefit from those faculty, not just in the Harris School, but around. And our employers know that, and that's one of the things that they often say is important. So what's our philosophy? What is career development? How do they think about what they do and how they can be of help? Well, one of the first things we talk with students about is a career development plan. That means while you're here, what are we going to do to help you maximize every opportunity that's available to you to help you reach your end goal? What does it take for you to be successful? And we map that out with you. We have a session and we talk through it. The function of that may be a resume review or a cover letter, but the long-term conversation is what is the goal and what does it take? You may say, you mentioned that somebody's a senator. I want to be a senator. Well, maybe you have those connections and money to do that right after graduation, but it's likely that you're going to need to do a couple of things after graduation to be able to get there, and we talk about what those might be. That wasn't a drum roll, that was just... The other thing that we really believe in is that you should expose yourself to a variety of different services and opportunities. We offer a number of different workshops, a number of different employers come on campus, but there's employers that come to different places, go to the Central University, or there's a workshop that a different committee is doing, and there's a speaker over here, or you have connections with your previous employer. Those are all things that are part of your career development plan to make you a more successful candidate when you're looking for either an internship or full-time employment. And lastly, we really view our role as a partnership. We want to work with you to make this a successful and valuable time. But at the end of the day, this is really a partnership. I don't have a magical drawer of jobs or internships. Sometimes I wish that I did. But we want to teach you the skills and to be able to help you master this process. We hear from alums that typically 3 to 5 years after graduation, they want to go through this process again, meaning finding another job. And if while you are here, you utilized and learned those skills, it's more valuable when you're having to go through it a second time. I feel like I'm going through this kind of quick, and some of you look really excited, and others of you look like perhaps you need another cup of coffee. Okay, good laughter, then I know you're at least with me. All right, so this gets to our services. We have a lot of events. In fact, I think fall quarter you'll get sick of us because literally everything's going on every single day. This year, the first day of classes, we had an employer in. Before classes, during math camp, we had workshops. We really front load a lot of stuff. We have career panels and networking opportunities that are both formal and informal. We believe wholeheartedly in your ability to network to be successful, both to refine and define your goals, but also to put you in contact with the right people who are doing the type of thing that you're doing. I mentioned during orientation and during math camp we do something called, I didn't give it a name, but it's called Fast Start Fridays, which is, during that first time, let's kickstart what you're doing and really give you some tools at the very beginning so you can be successful, since employers are literally here the first day of campus. On campus recruiting, that's everything from an employer hosting an information session to going to a site visit as they're at GAO today, or with the CIA upstairs doing interviews. That's all of what on-campus recruiting means. We have real-world perspective series. These are fantastic. They typically happen during the winter quarter. And what this is we have practitioners that join us from a variety of different angles to talk about a single topic. So for instance, this February we had a topic on healthcare and the future of healthcare. It so happened it was the day after the Massachusetts election. I'd love to say that I'd planned it that way, but I couldn't, it didn't quite work out the way that it just worked out. So we had someone who was a hospital administrator, someone who was a doctor, someone who worked for the state, all talk about the future of healthcare. It's a closed-door event, so they know press isn't there, and they have the opportunity to speak directly to students. It's impactful. They get to say things that they couldn't say other places and give advice to students in a way that is really meaningful for you. You're able to ask questions that maybe you'd feel uncomfortable doing on a one-on-one, but really help you understand, what does this mean, what does this topic mean, what's the future, how is this going? It was fascinating. Something called Recruiter in Residence. We often ask our recruiters to come and spend a day with us, to join us in our luxurious office suites. And they take up an office, and they are able to meet with students about specific topics for you to understand, okay, this is the industry I might be interested in. What specific things should I know and how I'm crafting my resume? What are some verbs that I should be using? What are some things I shouldn't be saying? The students have recorded that being very helpful. And we have more workshops than perhaps I could list here. A lot of those are on the website, but some of the standard and some of the non-standard ones too. So, web resources. More and more students have requested things to be more electronic, which we've adapted to. The first is Harris Link, and that's really the hallmark, cornerstone, whatever term you want to use for our web resources. It is a place where all of our jobs are posted. You can post your resume there so that employers can come and see it, and we have some employers that's their sole means of recruiting. And so they look at our resumes and call a couple of students in and do it that way. I think that's the easiest job search I've ever heard of, but it works out well for our students. Our events are posted there. You can schedule a time to come in and talk to one of us in the office. It's a great system. And once you become a student and are enrolled, you're able to access that. Career development calendars, we publish those quarterly so you can plan accordingly. We have something called the Alumni Career Network. because we believe so passionately about the notion of networking, we really encourage students to utilize this service. It's not just Harris School, it's the University of Chicago. So when you do a search and you're interested in someone who is working in Oklahoma City, if there isn't a Harris School student in Oklahoma City, or Harris School alum, and there actually is, but let's say that there isn't, then there may be somebody throughout the university and you're able to connect with them. Or if what you want to do is more specialized, perhaps you can connect with them through the Alumni Career Network. So it's a great resource. And we have a number of different career development guides online that you can look at 3 in the morning when you don't want to talk to me at 3 in the morning. Tools. We have business cards. We have a resource library. We do customized career coaching. We have a group internship program, and that's a cost-sharing agreement we do with employers. It's a strategic development tool we use to say to employers, you've got amazing students, and you should have an internship program, and let us help you craft one for the first year, and then you can come back and run it full time. And what we've seen is employers who participate in that program not only recruit interns the next year, but then figure out how to hire the interns full time, what we call a pipeline to employment. So that's been very successful. Professor Ludwig mentioned the mentor program. That's a competitive process where over the summer you'll be asked to present a application to say, these are the things I'm interested in, this is who I'd like to connect with in the city of Chicago. We have 80 to 100 mentors who have a variety of different topics and backgrounds, and they meet with you one-on-one to talk about where you're going and what you're hoping to get out of it. Let me give you a little bit of a tip. The best applications are ones that are very clear about what they're hoping to get out of the mentor program and the things that they're hoping to ask their mentor about. So that's just a little heads up as you're writing those applications. We do mock and behavioral case interviews, resume and cover letter reviews. I'm flying through this stuff because I want to get to the questions. If I'm going too fast, give me the high sign. All right. So actually we're going to be passing around something, but I want to talk about the success of our students and where they work. As you can see, it's a variety of different places. I think that's one of the most exciting things about the Harris School is, we're not just sending everybody to the GAO or the CIA, although I've mentioned them now I think 3 times. It's not just federal employees. It's nonprofits, local. It's private sector. It's state and local. It's all different kinds of things. The common thread that you'll see here, though, is the focus on public. So even if you're working on the private side, it's really on a notion of public-private partnership, or what would that mean? So these are here. What you're getting now is something called an internship report and an employment report. We are numbers driven here at the Harris School, and since you want to come join us, I'd assume that that would be something you'd be interested in too. So it gives you sort of an idea of where our students have gone and what they've been interested in. There's also something called a frequently asked questions. These are ones that we get, when people call and ask us things. So they're here. This is also on the website, so if you don't, if you misplace this one, it's there. You're also getting a red bookmark, and that bookmark is what we give students during orientation. So if you come and you get that during orientation, just act surprised and happy about it again. But that gives you an overview of all the resources. I went through it really quickly, but it shows you where those are at and how you get those. And if you get home and are trying to log on, know that many of these are on the student intranet, so don't get too frustrated. Know that, once you enroll, that you'll have access to all of those sorts of things. A note about the reports. These are just numbers, so it's hard to really tell the story behind what this means. And there's a lot of inferring one can do from the numbers. So what happened here, why this jump, why that decrease, all of those sorts of things. And I hope, as people who are going to be critical about data, that you would begin doing that as soon as you see it. What you're missing is there's a whole other piece of this puzzle, which is what was the class makeup when they came in? What was the class profile? So were these people who came in with lots of experience, less experience? Were these people who all wanted to stay in Chicago, who didn't want to stay in Chicago? Were these all people who were interested in working for nonprofit child and family services? Each class tends to have a sort of feeling about it, but that's one piece that's not in here. The other piece is the economy. Things ebb and flow. There's some groups that times when the private sector is hiring like mad, and there's other times when they're not. So look at this. We also publish our numbers at graduation. Some schools will give you the class of, and what that means is for anybody who graduated in class of 2008, for the entire year, that's when they report. So it could be that the person found employment 9 months later, but they're included in that report. This is a snapshot at graduation, and we do that so that we can really see where we're at. But what you'll notice is, and if you're at all familiar about hiring, is that the private sector is really a machine when it comes to hiring, right? So they have a season, they come in with a class of, and they've got this down. The public and the nonprofit sector tend not to have that machine mentality. So they have a posting, a new department head will come in. So they tend to do what we call just-in-time hiring. So sometimes those numbers shift. In fact, we see the largest jump in those two fields after graduation. So that's some of what's there. The other thing that I want to caution you about, I think there's sometimes a tendency to be like, I would like to, who has made the most money? I think that that's now my goal. That's where I'm going to work, and that's what I'm going to do. The challenge in here is that everybody's different. So do you have the capacity for doing something that's on here? Absolutely. Is it as easy for you as your neighbor? I don't know. It depends on what your experience is and which opportunities you maximize when you're here. So I want to caution you against using it as sort of a menu of what you'd like to pick and choose to do. Because I just don't want you to be disappointed to sort of think, well, I'm going to make $125,000. Well, maybe, but maybe not. So I just want to make sure that that's out there. Okay. I'm going to move on because I have a feeling there'll be lots of questions about this, and so you can just read while I go through the rest of these things. But again, sort of how do you maximize this? So given all of this, given these resources, if you're somebody who really wants to come here and do this, what do I do between now and math camp? The first is really have a goal, right? And understand if that goal is obtainable, if that goal is realistic, right? I mentioned earlier I want to be in Congress. Do some assessment about what that means. Maybe it is something you can do right after graduation. Maybe there's some things you need to do before that. You need to be able to communicate the value of your previous experience and the role that this degree is playing in you reaching that goal. So we can help you by giving some of that verbiage to you. A lot of it's in the frequently asked questions. But that's the first question employers are going to ask you when they meet you. It's the first thing your colleagues are going to ask you when they meet you. It's the first thing I'm going to ask you when I meet you is, what did you do before? Why did you come to Harris? How is this helping you get there? So spend some time, what we call an elevator speech. If you haven't heard the term, it's the time it takes you to get in an elevator and ride it to where you're going to explain to somebody what you're doing, typically about 30 seconds. Spend some time talking through that and understanding what that means for you. Refine your craft. If you are passionate about issues of inequality, you should be up to date on that, right? So if something comes through in the news, if there's a new research thing published, you should have read it and know about it. If you are interested in the numbers and the statistics, make sure that you're ready to do those sorts of things. Spend time knowing what you're doing and refining your craft, and you'll do it here. You'll join professional associations, you'll go to conferences, all of those sorts of things are very important. Connect with policymakers, make that a priority, both through formal programs like the mentor program, but also through informal programs like going to alumni meetings, go to this thing in DC if you're from the area, talk with people about their experience and what they've learned. I always like to ask the 2020 question, or as my husband says, the Monday morning quarterback, whatever your take is, which is, what would you do over? What would you do different? Help me understand that. Understand field, sector, and location. I think sometimes, and that goes back to having a goal, students come in and want to revolutionize the world in August of when they graduate, right? And maybe there's something out there, but there typically might be a little longer for you to do. So understand what it takes for you to be successful in your field. Understand what it means and what the realities of that is. And again, that'll come through the connection with policymakers. And lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't say understand your needs. Understand what you need to get out of this. What feeds your passion? What's going to make you excited to get up and go to work every day? What's the reality of your life? I mean, are you somebody who could live in the middle of nowhere, or do you need to be in an urban area? Do you have a partner that needs to come into this consideration? These are things that wouldn't necessarily come up with an employer, but certainly as we're having a partnership and talking through what the next steps might mean for you, these are important for us to know and for you to be honest with yourself as you're exploring other opportunities. Without further ado, I'm going to go to questions because, well, as I said, I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions, and I talked really, really fast. So there's probably some things maybe you didn't hear. So I'll take questions if you guys have them. Oh, good.
What would your advice be,
Mm-hmm.
About, with less clearly defined goals of where they want to end up.
Right.
How do you?
Okay, so the question for those of you who didn't hear it was, what about career changers, or what about in that career changer if I know what I don't want to do, but maybe I don't know what I want to do, right? Is that fair?
Right.
Okay. So I think I always tease people who come back from internship and was like, well, that was a waste because I never want to do that again. Well, no, it's not a waste because you know you don't want to do that. So I think spending some time doing some assessment about what you do like to do and thinking through how you use those skills. So if you're somebody who's more on the communication side of things, what would that mean? I mean, do you literally want to be the person saying this is what this policy means, or do you want to be the person a couple back saying here's how we think about it? There's all kinds of different ways, and I just picked that one, and that's kind of ambiguous. But practically, as soon as you get into the Harris School, if there's a policy area or something in your field that you didn't used to be on policy, you want to get something on your resume as soon as you can that says policy, other than the Harris School, right? So that you can begin to build credibility within that field. And we can talk more about it. It can be done. The trick is knowing what is transferable and being able to effectively communicate that in a way that people understand it. So for instance, a couple years ago, I worked with somebody who was a chemical engineer, and he was coming back. Well, I couldn't understand his resume. I mean, brilliant, right? I mean, he was doing all kinds of things. But I needed you to break down in layman's terms what you were doing. Using shorthand and abbreviations and acronyms wasn't working for a policy person. So, which sounds logical, but when you're in that world and shifting out of it, sometimes that doesn't help. So there's a number of tools we can give you to kind of walk you through making sure that is transferable to language, but then thinking about the skills, and then as soon as you can identify getting something on there that can build credibility. And that credibility can happen through student groups. It can happen through, there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. So there was actually, I'm going to go to him, and then I'll come back to you.
What percentage of students do not have a job by graduation?
Well, you can look on there and do the math backwards, right? So that's of those seeking, right? So, and that's the other piece that I should mention is it's graduating of students seeking employment. So there are some students who, and I'm jealous about this, are married to wealthy spouses and are going to go travel Europe for a couple months. And so the time we do the survey, they're not really interested in working. Bless their hearts. And there's others that, they're going to get a PhD, they're doing education. There's all kinds of different ways that people aren't seeking employment. They're returning to country of origin or something along those lines. And that's just at graduation. So sometimes, for instance, there's somebody who's graduating this year. She wants to go back and work at the city of Chicago, at the city of San Francisco. She's got great contacts, but if you've at all read the news, that's tough, right? I mean, the city of San Francisco isn't exactly flush with cash. So she knows that at graduation, she's probably not going to have a job. As soon as they have money, she's going to be the person on the phone because she's made those contacts. So, yeah. You had a question, and then, yeah.
I was going to ask what is realistic, and I'm sure it varies student by student, but with the workload, what's realistic as far as hours in an internship or a job outside of?
Thank you for asking that question. I normally talk about that. So the question is, can I work while I go to school here? And what we typically tell people, and what I would recommend, is that the first quarter you don't work. This is an intensive program, and the core, particularly the first quarter, can throw you for a bit of a loop, particularly if you're not from an econ background or a stats background or something along those lines, right? So just getting into the rhythm of that can be all-encompassing. Students that are winter, spring, certainly during the summer, that's where most students do internships, in their second year do work. A lot of our second years have what I would consider part-time, I keep hitting the mic, part-time employment. And that can vary based on the student and their interest and, frankly, what the work is. I know some students who are working 30 hours a week their second year. I don't know when they sleep, but they do. There are other students who, will work 10 or 15. So it's not uncommon. In fact, we see quite a few students do it. We'd recommend that you do it. It gives you a practical experience, and that's where my passion is. Obviously, I'm this side of things, so I would encourage you to do that. Here and yeah.
Let's say within the past 3 or 4 years, you get numbers on how many students applied for the Presidential Management Fellowship and how many actually received it.
Yeah, the Presidential Management Fellowship, for those of you who aren't aware of what that is, it's commonly referred to as the PMF. It's sort of a fast track into the federal government, and it's a fantastic program. And if you've considered working for any federal agency, most federal agencies, I should say. several years ago, they shifted the way that we did the assessment. So it used to be that you'd go to an assessment site, you'd take a test, and then you'd interact with a human being and with your classmates, and it would be that sort of way. I think now this is probably the third year that we've done, there was a sort of fill-in-the-bubble assessment, right? There's a writing, there's a logic section, and there's a math section, right? This year, our percentage, we had 4 students, but for percentage, this year we didn't do as well as we did last year. Yeah. So the first year that we did it, when no one knew anything about the assessment, we did really, really well because typically people who come to the U of C do pretty well on testing. We do that pretty well. The second year it went more law school students, and then this year we were trying to figure out where that went. When I say we, all of the career directors for policy schools get together once a year and sort of share notes about where we're going and what we're doing so that we can together say to the Office of Personnel Management, maybe you want to think through how you do this assessment. So 4 is what I should tell you. I think we had 12 apply, maybe more than that. But we do fairly well. We have testing, preps, and all of that sort of stuff. I don't know that I answered it. I'm going to actually go to the woman here, and then I'll come. I probably should go to the back of the room, but.
Is there lifetime access to the career database and your services?
Fantastic. So what alumni services are available? We have unlimited, at this moment, access to, alums have unlimited access to our services. They're able to come in and meet with us. The one exception is on-campus employment and on-campus recruitment, because the employers who are coming here are expecting to talk to current students. There are occasions where that could be talked through, but we have access to sort of work with people that way. And I should also say in that regard, we have reciprocity agreements with other schools. So if you're wanting to go to Seattle, we would contact them just as if their graduates were coming here. And there's a set of criteria and restrictions that you need to fit, but there's that opportunity as well. So, in the back glasses.
What recommendations would you have for students that are coming back after spending several years abroad?
Abroad, you said.
That therefore have a lot of contacts abroad, but not as many in the States, and then want to sort of pursue more domestic jobs upon graduation?
Well, first of all, your classmates are going to love you because, you know, typically I hear the opposite, right? We've got lots of domestic experience, and I want to go international, but I don't have international experience. So step one is to figure out a classmate who has the opposite problem and trade. But all joking aside, the mentor program is a great way to do that, the Alumni Career Network. I mean, you really have to set your goal and figure out what to do. Students have the best of intentions, but, you know, third week of fall quarter comes around and you get your first assignment, and it's a little intense, and you really wanted to go down to that networking event or that event, and you didn't have a chance to do it. So making those priorities and realizing just doing those contacts. We have a great array of employers, domestic, that are coming in to do information sessions, coming and meeting with those people, doing research ahead of time so that when that employer's in front of you, you're asking thoughtful questions, can make a huge difference. And that's really what I would recommend, is that you do. If you make it a priority, that's easy. There was actually someone, yes?
So my question is, I'm looking at the numbers and seeing that there's definitely a launch for the percentage of students who are pursuing jobs in DC.
Mm-hmm.
And we also are looking that you roughly have a third the public sector, a third nonprofit, and 1/3 that are going to the private sector. My question is, what would you identify right now as the limitations of the higher school based on its location from jobs that are with nonprofit, with headquarters in DC, or
Right.
the federal government? And what are the steps that are taken, and for our class, what should we be expecting
Sure.
as extra resources that will put us on that edge for recruitment in DC?
So the question is, you guys are in Chicago, and if I want to go to DC, what does that mean, right? So the first thing is that you're not going to walk outside and, you know, in between classes be able to go to that headquarters. So you have to realize as a student there's going to be some cost, both in time and in resources, to be able to go there, either for interviews or to connect with people or to do that sort of thing. Our research, and I think what most of you would agree, is that in-person connection is incredibly valuable. So at the beginning, saying if you know you want to go to DC, whenever you got a break, you're going to go out there and do some informational interviews and make those connections. So doing that from the forefront is the very first thing. We're actually, next week, I'm going with a group of students who said we'd like to go as a group on a Thursday and Friday to connect with some employers. Can we work with you to arrange that? And we worked with those student groups to do that. So that's what it is out there. It certainly can be done, as you can see by our numbers. We have a lot of alums in DC. We have a lot of contacts there. But you have to be deliberate. I think, sometimes people will choose employment in Chicago because they can kind of stumble on it, right? So you can, I was out at a pub and I ran into this guy, and what do you know? We're both Harris alums, and the next thing I know, that kind of thing, right? You're not going to bump into somebody, most likely, in the same way. So you have to just be intentional about it. So students who are focused and who do that do really well, really well. We have a very strong alumni group in DC. In fact, if you're in DC, again, you should come to the event next week where these students will be there. You can talk to them about their experience and all of that sort of thing. So, yes?
I wanted to ask sort of the opposite question.
Oh.
This aspect there. I've worked internationally and would consider continuing to do so in Harris School. I noticed that you've got 20% of people doing international internships, but only 6% end up employed abroad.
Right.
So I was wondering, what...
How does that work? Yeah.
And I'd like to keep my international opportunities open.
Right.
Come to the Harris School.
Right. Okay, so here's the question. I want to work internationally. There's a disparity between those who do internships and those who get full-time employment, and what does that mean? I could give you some anecdotes about why I think that happens. First is I think there are some people who travel abroad, who work abroad, who do internships abroad, who, for a variety of reasons, don't like it, right? So this was their first experience internationally, and it was great, but they learned that's not particularly what they want to do. It's typically a very low-paying work. So going and doing international work, most of the people who are doing international work are not making $90,000 doing international work. And so sometimes, because of personal reasons, they're not able to do that. So that's one reason. The other is it doesn't account for classes there. So internships are a longer period of time. It's through the years, and employment is that snapshot. Employment internationally takes longer to do. So I don't know if that's a good answer. The longer answer is you really do have to, if you have contacts, you need to stay in contact with those contacts. You need to broaden your network while you're here. It's tougher because it's more expensive to get overseas than it is in DC, and those phone calls and those sorts of things. So is it difficult? Yes. Do you have to focus on it? Yes. Is it impossible? No. No, we have people who do it all the time. It just depends on, when you say international, it depends on specifically how international can mean so many different things. It just depends on what you want to do. Does that make sense? Because people will say all the time to me, oh, I want to do international development. Well, is that on the grant side of things? Is that in the program of development or in the implementation? Are you going to be in country? Are you going to be out of country? Are you going to work for a governmental agency? There's all kinds of different ways that happens. So if you have already done it, that says to me that I keep hitting the mic, that you have focus, and that you're going to have probably not the same challenges that other people who maybe don't have that experience have. That sounds like a non-answer, but hopefully it gives some ideas to what you're saying.
Are there any funding opportunities for unpaid internships?
Oh, unpaid internships, and how can I survive if I decide to do that, right? And that's a great question, particularly off the international piece, because many international internships are unpaid. So that's a very important piece. We have something called the Amy Bosman Fellowship. For those of you who are sticking around tomorrow and going to the auction, that's what that's all about, is to raise money to help students with unpaid internships. So go and bid high and spend lots of money. It depends on how much money they raise, but that's one opportunity. There's also something called the Human Rights Fellowship through the main university, which if that's a topic area that you're interested in, there's some funding available that way. And students have also worked through a number of different offices that may have some additional things, but that's the two big ones that are out there. There was a question, yes?
If you have like a specific state you kind of want to be in,
right,
in school, like California,
mm-hmm.
Can we work with you guys to establish interviews and connections, say, in the Bay Area?
So specifically in the Bay Area, we get lots of people who are from that area, and we just want to talk through specifically where you want to go. We have alums there. We may want to use the reciprocity agreement with Goldman so that you're able to access some of if that's of interest. So there's the things that we want to do. You just, again, from the beginning, want to be able to know what it is that you're doing. If you choose a specific location, that mean that you need to be broader about the other things that you're interested in, right? So that you get the most amount of opportunities and rank that first, that means the other things sort of filter out. Does that make sense? I'm sort of jumping ahead on the way we talk about sticking things out.
So just be specific about.
Be upfront. So when you come into our office, say, I really want to be in the Bay Area. And if that means that I'm at a research institution, or if I'm working for the city, or if I'm working for a consulting firm, I need to be in the Bay Area. You left your heart in San Francisco and you need to go back. And that's fine as long as you're open to the other opportunities. I think the challenge is when someone says, I want to go back to San Francisco and I want to work in the mayor's office on transportation and policy issues. It's totally, that may be doable, but you've really limited the number of opportunities that you've had. So my advice is, just when I said personal reasons, if that's something that's important to you, really make sure that you're considering all opportunities so that you can make that happen. Well, it sounds to me like a number of you should go and visit the WIP table, which is Women in Public Policy. They're a student group, and they have funding for conferences. They actually help with PPSA to do some of the auction stuff, and they're a great student organization, and they actually have a conference fund. CHIP, which is Child and Family Policy. Center for, thank you, Center for Human. I totally messed that one up. They also have funding for conferences as well. I believe that master's students can access them. I know PhD students can access it. So there's a variety of different stuff out there. I'm glad you asked the question. It's fantastic. You should go to conferences and join professional associations and do all of that stuff. Regardless if you come here or not, you're a professional in this industry. Act as such as soon as you join whichever school you go to. There's student rates, and it's a nice way to get through the door a whole lot cheaper than once you have your degree. There was another question here. Mm-hmm. So here's the question. I'm direct from undergrad. I was an academic superstar, but I'm lacking on the experience. Fair? Okay. So it's an uphill battle, right? Because when I asked the question, or I said this is what employers are going to ask you, is tell me about your experience and tell me about why Harris. You really have to have an answer for that, not knowing exactly your experience. There are some students who have done internships or other experiences while they were a student, and perhaps it wasn't full-time, but they have some skills that they can talk about. I think if I were a student in that predicament, I would really look about what that meant for me and understand where that puts me. I think the challenge that students who find it, perhaps you're asking for somebody else, but for students who are in that predicament, often want to sit next to the person who's worked 15 years at a firm and retired to come here and get frustrated when they're not getting the same opportunities as the person next to them. So part of that is managing expectations and working with us about how do you say what you're going to say. But it is a challenge. I'll be completely honest. It is a challenge because our employers like people who have experience. So you just got to tackle that from the beginning. Other questions?
Yeah, I noticed in your employment report from 2007, 2009,
yeah.
In private have decreased a little bit, and nonprofits gone from 7% to 38%.
Okay, you're getting real technical here, so hold on, let me look at my numbers here. So in the employment side, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now which
the sector demographic.
Okay, in the sector demographic, from what year to what year?
From 2007 to 2009, nonprofits gone from 7% to 38%.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, like, what do you think that reflects? Is that sort of like a broader economic issue, or is it?
I think it's a lot of things. It's certainly not an intentional effort. That makes it sound like we don't have intentional efforts. It's not intentional. I think that the class of 2007 and the market in 2007 was very, very different than the market in 2009. I think that many people view nonprofit as babies and bunnies, and it's not. And as we have educated students and we've brought in employers who reflect what I think is a more robust sense of what the nonprofit industry is, including major research firms, that's shifted some. So I think it's a couple things. I mean, I think in 2007 it was the private sector was booming and you could do a totally different thing than you could do in 2009. So I think that's a large part of it. But there's also a shift in understanding about what that field and sector does. Is that fair? Okay. Well, I will answer one more question, but it's almost lunchtime, right? And I mean, I know you want to talk about employment numbers forever, but I know what you guys get for lunch, and trust me, you want to get to lunch. So Adana Larkins will be at the fair. she will have extra copies of these things if by chance. But you're going to ask that question before lunch. See, I said lunch and people get all crazy. Go ahead.
Super quick question.
Okay.
So 62% of graduates were employed at graduation.
Mm-hmm.
Are there numbers or data on 3 months after graduation, 6 months?
Yeah. I wish there were. There's not. We don't have the ability to do that now. So that would be a fantastic research project for somebody who was interested in labor to come in and volunteer their time to come in and work with us on. So that's where that's at. I know, just anecdotally, there was a number of, last year in particular, public and nonprofit firms that weren't sure about funding, and so they were holding off on employment until they knew. So a lot of places wanted to hire but just didn't know what that meant. So people were in the final stages. We don't add people in who have an offer and haven't yet accepted, or who are awaiting final offer. So just because we want to be really true about the snapshot type of thing. So it's gone up. So hope that helps. But. Okay, great. Well, you have an amazing day. You're meeting with alums next. Ask them what their experience is. Ask them the value of the degree, what they would have done different. Enjoy the day, and by all means, check out the website for additional questions.